Let me tell you a little of the rich and wonderful history of this great place we call Brookfield. Before the Europeans arrived, there were the Aboriginal people who hunted in these bountiful hills and creeks. They were the Turrbal people, and they gave the name of Maggle or Moggle to the water dragon, which was plentiful along the creeks. When John Oxley explored the Brisbane River in 1823 and charted his journey, he noted a waterway entering the river through a rich forest of hoot pine. Timber getters soon followed, moving into this area now known as Moggle Creek, felling timber and rafting it down the river to Pettigrew's sawmill in Brisbane town. When the new colony of Queensland was born and land became available for selection, the first 6 families to select in 1868 in what became known as the Moggle Creek community were the Curries, Laws, Joneses, Gregorys, Ballards and Pallets. Being on both Gold and Moggle Creek, the new settlers wanted to create a distinctive identity for their new community, and it was young Lucinda Brimblecombe who came up with the name of Brookfield, and that is how this beautiful, peaceful place has been known ever since. And so Brookfield gradually evolved. The natural place to gather was on the flats, where the main valley roads met just downstream of the junction of Moggle and Gold Creeks. And it was at this place in 1872 that some 40 acres of land was reserved for recreational activities, a cemetery and a school. The Brookfield district grew quickly, confidently becoming an industrious community, creating dairies, growing small crops, felling timber, mining gold and proudly building its future. The first Brookfield Hall, built in 1871, was moved across Moggle Creek onto the reserve in 1887. The second hall, the Victory Hall, built in Darra a century ago, was moved here in 1932. These 2 halls merged and became what we have today. The Brookfield Hall is our iconic building and has always been central to life in Brookfield. Let me also tell you of some of the early happenings here on the flats of Brookfield. Since 1875, the reserve has been home to the Brookfield Cricket Club, which still thrives today and is 141 years not out. Brookfield State School children celebrated Arbor Day in 1893 with maypole dancing and the sports program. In 1895, the Queensland Mounted Infantry, which became the Australian Light Horse, held a spectacular full-day parade plus a bonfire concert and a dance. The first Brookfield show, a one-day affair, was held in 1910. The first schoolmaster's residence, built in 1874, was shifted to the reserve and became the much-loved Brookfield General Store. Throughout the 1950s, the Western Suburbs Horse Society put on many horse shows on the showground. Brookfield also had its own rugby league team and won a premiership in 1958. The Brookfield Show Society became into being in 1956 and restarted the lapsed Brookfield Show, triggering ongoing additions to the amenities on the showground. And building on that momentum, the Brookfield Horse and Pony Club was formed in 1960 and rapidly became part of the fabric of Brookfield, teaching generations how to ride and ride well. And so we come to our modern era. Throughout the 1970s through the 1990s, a flurry of building and refurbishment occurred. This included the addition of a poultry pavilion, a cattle pavilion, a cookery pavilion, a cultural and activities and art pavilion, a pony club building, and finally a cricket club pavilion. It was during this time that the first members' bar building was erected at this current site. Since the turn of the century, the momentum has been maintained with major refurbishment of the Brookfield Hall and the General Store. Then the Brookfield Museum came into being, the main oval was refenced, the long yard retaining walls were rebuilt, and all showground buildings were painted in proud heritage colours. Most recently, there has been the building of the sandstone retaining wall under the fig trees, together with the handsome sandstone terraces and the long yard equestrian arena. But the really big news of the moment is the completion of the new members' bar and precinct. So here we all are, once again gathered beside dear old Moggle Creek, standing in the footsteps of those that first did so a century and a half ago. It's timely, therefore, to take a nostalgic trip through the history of the happy hour, the members' bar and the showground. The original happy hour has had a nomadic life, It started out in 1977 in the hall annex, discreetly hidden behind the picket fenced area at the front of the hall. It then sojourned for a little while up on the hill in the Apex building before it ambled down to the old steward's room veranda to be close to the action. It was housed in a couple of battered old dongas until the big decision was taken to erect a dedicated timber building in the 1990s, and so the first members bar was born. Many, many, many stories can be told of the doings at the showground, and we hope these great pictures of characters and events will help embroider its grand history. So now it's time to welcome the newcomer, the freshly minted and very handsome new members bar. On this grand night we gather to welcome it to its handsome new home and continue the great Brookfield tradition of raising a glass, or several, and toasting it to robust good health. The Brookfield Members Bar is now open for business, so let's set about creating some new and everlasting memories.